Good evening. Welcome to On Deck with Mercury. My name is Mercury Payton. I'm the town manager here in Vienna. And we have two topics this evening for discussion and interaction with you all here. The first topic is the police station construction project. And we have with us Chief Jim Morris. Hi, how are you, Jim?
Good evening.
Good to see you. And we also have our second topic is the election on November 3rd. And we have with us the Director of Office of Election with Fairfax County, Gary Scott. He's in the audience with us tonight, and he'll be on around 7 o'clock for the second part of our discussion. So before we begin, I just wanted to make sure that everyone here and watching, that they would remember to stay safe. So wash your hands, stay home if you're sick, remember social distance, and to wear your face covering whenever you're close in proximity with someone. So just want to make sure everyone is staying safe during this the time pandemic we're in. So let's get started with our first part of the discussion. Jim, good to see you. You tend to be a regular here on my On Deck with Mercury, so I'm glad to have you here with us.
Co-host.
Co-host. So tell us a little bit about why the town of Vienna needs a new police facility.
Sure. The need for the police facility isn't something that came on board with yourself or with me or anybody who is currently involved in the project. The building we're in now was built in 1994. At that time, for economic reasons, labor reasons, various reasons, the building was downsized to the point where when it opened, there was a parking agreement with the church next door to park that building. It wasn't even big enough to park. It wasn't constructed big enough to park, and we knew it. As early as 2002, 2004, the need started to be identified that building was already, the need for the police officers and technology already outgrew that building. By 2005, a needs assessment was done. RFP was issued for a needs assessment. Again, for budgetary reasons, the RFP went out, but was never acted upon, just because the budget, the money wasn't in the budget at that time. At that point, I'm not sure if it was Chief Carlisle or even previous generations, began outsourcing pieces of the building to make room. That's how, over years, the investigations ended up in the basement of this building. That's how we ended up renting storage units for property and evidence. That's how we ended up with the bike team in the basement of the Bowman house, because the building was just outgrown. If you look outside, some of the pictures in the hallway, we wanted to illustrate that need. Some of those you will see are storage completely filling up stairwells. The mechanical system, the one picture you see out there with the tubes running across the floor, we had to actually bring in portable air conditioning several times just because the heating and air conditioning system of the building's failing. So that's what brought us to the needs assessment. When I came on in 2013, we were just finishing up a needs assessment. Mosley Architecture did it. And a typical needs assessment, did the survey, spoke to officers, industry standards, and came up with that there was a need for a 30,000 square foot building. That's what the needs assessment from 2013 said. With that needs assessment came suggestions for conceptual designs, but as the town residents fully understand, at that time we were moving on to community center.
Right.
So with that, everything with the police station sort of went on hold, packaged it up, and we just sat on it until the community center project was finished. When that was finished, that's where we came in back engaged, brought in project management, brought in architect, put out an RFP to Dewberry. They're the architectural firm. Downey and Scott's the project manager firm, and we've been working from that point on ever since.
Good. That sounds like it's been in the works for quite a few years. Why would it be better to build a new facility instead of renovating the existing one?
Sure. Well, like I said, we knew we had to expand. That's why we purchased the Locust Street house again. I think that was finishing right when I came on in 2013. That was just taking place, the closing on the Locust Street house. So we knew we had to get bigger. One of the first steps we did with Dewberry was Dewberry designed two specific ideas. One was to renovate the building we're in to the size it needed to be, and the other was new construction. We rolled both concepts out to council. There was a very small price differential between renovating, and new construction. And then when you bring in the professionals, the project management team, members of council who understand the building, the thought process was, especially after renovating the community center, that new construction is the way to go, and the price difference wasn't something that was swaying anyone's decision one way or the other.
Sure.
So at that point, we decided on new construction for the building.
Sure, and as renovations go, when you think about a renovation, you get a price tag for that, even with contingency.
Right.
You don't know what's behind that wall or below that floor.
Right.
And then costs may go up, but with the new build,
Right, and there were several things. Even though that building was built in 1994, there shouldn't be asbestos in it. In some spots, there is asbestos.
Right.
So if we were renovating, we'll still have to deal with it to take it out. But renovating, that would have been a bigger hurdle that even when we made the decision, we did not know.
Sure. So can you give us a brief overview and status report of the project to date, and like where are we now?
Sure. The project has been through the BAR, the BZA, it's been to work sessions, it's been to council, and then council agreed to put the RFP out for proposals for construction companies. Prior to putting out the proposal for construction companies, another lesson learned, we pre-qualified construction companies. We put on the street who thinks they're going to want to bid on this project. So we had companies submit a pre-qualification package. As part of that, 6 companies were deemed to be pre-qualified. And I'm not going to speak on it as a professional, but it has to do with the company itself, complaints, pending litigation, bond capacity. We checked references. So we did that up front. So when the IFB went out earlier this year, a couple months ago, 5 of the 6 companies bid on it. Those bids were opened on Friday, and the low bidder, who is already a pre-approved construction company, is Hoare Construction. So where we're at now is that will be coming in front of council on October 26th to award the contract for construction.
Good. What's the building going to look like? And I see there's a nice rendering to your left there, so maybe point out some architectural features for us.
Well, sure. I mean, right off the bat, you see, the large part, the 3-story part, I guess if everyone's looking at to the right, is basically the police station. That's where there will be detectives, the administrative offices, our property section. There will be a range in there. There'll be a Sally port where we can bring cars in and process them. There'll be prisoner holding areas for interviews. There will not be any cells. We don't have a drunk tank or anything like that, and it's just hard and soft cells to bring people in. And then to the left, you see the little, I think they're calling it a pavilion. That's flexible space. That's space to address needs we have. The town does not have an emergency operations center. Some of that space is going to be used for that. It's community space. Right now, there's no ability to have the community in the building we're in. We average, I think Tu was just figuring it out, 15 to 20 visitors a day, and that we're not even inviting them in, they're just coming in to do business, into a lobby that, especially in this climate, can maybe hold 2 or 3 people. And that's another aspect of the front part. If you come in with a sensitive situation, there's nowhere for us to interview you. There's nowhere for us to talk to you. There's nowhere for us to take you aside and calm down, and you tell us something that might be very confidential, very embarrassing, or just you want to settle down. We don't have space for that. We don't have space to bring people in. The current arrangement, if you're arrested, and it doesn't matter what crime you're arrested for, you're going to be brought in the back door, you're going to walk right past Lieutenant Taylor's office, probably put in our conference room where people eat lunch, where we process, and that's where the interview is going to take place. That's what we do now. This will have designated facilities for that. This will have designated areas for property. So property, all the storage units will be liquidated. Property will come in and be able to be properly processed. And then the plaza in the front, that was one of the early on, when we first brought this to council, one of the early points that came up was, rather than just build a police station, why don't we enhance the community? And between the flexible space for the community, to work with Parks and Rec on putting programming into that space, and the plaza, that's what we're trying to do. There's a plaza there now. Very few people even know it's there. Nobody uses it, or next to nobody. I can't say nobody. I do see occasional. But it's not a space that adds anything to the town. It goes between the police station and the Bowman House, but there's not a lot going on there. Just I know in my visioning, you have a lot of activity at the Bowman House and Pottery. Why can't that flood into this plaza space? That was kind of the thought process behind it as we move forward, is to create a space for it. The police department as it stands right now doesn't really have an identity. If you don't know where it is, you're not going to find it. So again, this is where, that's Locust Street side. We still will have the Center Street address, and you'll still be able to find it from Center Street, but this will certainly be a significant footprint, of a significant, site for people coming by. They will know it's there, and if you need the police, you'll know where to come.
Sure. It sounds like you're excited about a lot of things about this project, but maybe tell us maybe one or two things that you're really excited about this project.
Sure. Well, I think the biggest excitement for me is what I see it doing for the town. Like I said, this wasn't my pet project. None of us were even employed here when it was first discussed that this project needed to occur. But as we've moved forward as a team, and then as the town team, we've brought it in, and you can see the benefit it can be for the town. I think this will truly be the Town of Vienna Police Department. The police department will be up to standards. We will be able to go seek accreditation. There'll be no question on how evidence is processed. There'll be no question on how prisoners are treated. There'll be no question on having the ability to professionally have a police department. Won't be people stumbling all over. If we have 3 juveniles, they aren't going to be interviewed in makeshift space. They're going to be interviewed in proper juvenile areas where they can be interviewed, and interviewed safely, properly, and securely. I think it's going to be a great addition to the community. I worked in Fairfax County, so I'm used to working in police stations. I was the commander at several stations that have, all Fairfax County police stations have this type of space. And you do things, you run like citizens advisory councils out of them. We're going to use it for training. We don't have anywhere to train right now. We have 51 total employees, 41 officers. There's nowhere to put them all in a room. We had an all-hands meeting for COVID update, and we had to do it in a gymnasium. We can't, we'd like to do training and in-house training facilitated, and this space would allow for that. It also would serve the needs for the town. The town's always in need of conference space. Anyone, whether it's a council member or an employee, can talk about there's no conference space, or you have like 2 rooms you have to make arrangements to get in. This will be adding to that mix also.
Gotcha. Well, I know I'm excited about the possibility of having town council work sessions there once a month. I know that some residents may be excited about RAD being on site instead of Neighborhood Federal Credit Union, which it is now. Maybe mention a few other things that residents would really be excited about.
Sure, and RAD's a perfect example. We have that program. It's rape, aggression, defense. It's a great program, very popular. We rent space at Navy Federal Credit Union for it, and thankfully they let us do it. But with that program is all sorts of equipment needs, padding, all sorts of things that we just don't have space for. We don't have space to put the class on here, but then we also don't have space to store that stuff. So a program like RAD, we will have more space to do that. If you know the fun run we do every year, we basically do it over in the Vienna Elementary School parking lot because we don't have space to bring those types of activities over onto the police department side. We would like to integrate the police department into that activity, into some of the other town activities that we do. There's no reason that can't be a focal point for police department. Bike rodeos. We can do bike rodeos on our own property, not the fire department parking lot like we currently do.
Okay. So when do you anticipate the construction beginning, and how long will it take?
Sure. With the bidding process done, the plans approved, we will be meeting this week with the project management team. So after the October 26th council meeting, we're ready to go and immediately start. And then we're on to the construction company's time frame. I'm not in construction, so I don't know what that means. Do they start the next day? Do they start 30 days? Do they start 60 days? But that will be the timetable we're on. I'm hoping we can be starting on this by the end of the year. Police department moved out, and construction moving forward. Some folks have already mentioned it's supposed to, might be a bad winter, so the more we can get done, the better off I think we're going to be.
Right. You just mentioned moving out, so where will the police officers move to?
Sure. As most everyone I think knows, the plan we were working under for a great deal of this time was the house the town purchased at 440 Buell Road. Mm-hmm. That was not popular with the community, but that's where we were going to go. I was preparing to seek council's approval to move forward on that arrangement. And with that arrangement, the investigators would have moved up to Buell Road. The administration would have moved up to Buell Road. We would have had to put a parking lot in the side of the house and possibly even the mulch yard area. We'd have had to do some paving. We'd have had to make ADA improvements, but we were prepared to do that, and we were moving forward to get ready to do that. And then the church purchase occurred, the church right next door to the police department. When that purchase, that just made our life that much more easy. Realizing that property has way bigger potential and way bigger plans, and the town is going to move forward with the future of that property for the next 24 months, we'd like to move part of the police department in there. Investigations can stay in the basement, but patrol will move over there, administration will move over there. It will give our chance to move the property room over there, while also still allowing Parks and Rec to run programs out of it if they want to, or have the discussion over running programs out of it, out of running space over there, sort of coexist in that property for 24 months. It saves us from significant renovations. We'll have to do some security measures. It will save us from having to build a parking lot.
Right.
And just, a lot of cost savings to move. We're moving next door. It will also eliminate, significant moving. And we'll maintain a public footprint for those 2 years. Certainly hours of operation will have to differ because it will not have dispatch in that building, but Monday through Friday business hours, we will still be open. You will still be able to come in and file a report, see me, see the deputy chief, and that I think is a significant advantage. There's not going to be prisoners going in there. We're not going to operate that as a cell or anything. Like I said, the investigators stay down here, so if an interview needs to take place, it would happen down here. It's not going to be, our footprint over there.
How will the new facility enhance policing capabilities and serving the residents of Vienna?
Well, as I mentioned, it will give us the opportunity to do community policing with the community. We can have them into our building. We can do more programs. At the same time, we can have space for in-car video. The servers for that type operation are significantly expensive. The training we need to do. This will give us training space. I know one of the hot topics is a range. We currently have a range. When that building was built in 1994, it has a range. We use that range, and we will look forward to continue using the range that we're going into, not just for shooting, but also for de-escalation practice and exercises. And then again, property. We could advance the property process for this town to a level where it's, it can't be disputed. Anytime you talk to court, you have custody of evidence, and where was that property, and how was that property kept during this investigation? And I really don't want to testify in court that it's in a storage unit somewhere across town. If it's in our facility with a property properly managed, properly handled. Again, evidence processing. Currently, and I'm really not kidding, the same table for evidence processing is the table folks eat on. It's the table we have emergency management operate out of if we need to. So we'll have space for evidence processing, safe evidence processing, not where there is proper ventilation, proper surfaces, so they won't be getting contaminated. It just raises the level of professionalism for the Town of Vienna Police Department just so significantly. So, and that's really what I'm looking forward to. You ask about being excited about something. That's what I'm excited for. We have 41 great police officers, and we're going to give them the tools to be even better police officers, an even better profession, and serve the community. And we want the community to be part of this building.
Right, right. Everyone probably wants to know, how much is this thing going to cost?
Well, as I think Marion's here, as Marion can attest to, in the 2020 bond, the town approved and went out for bond for $14.6 million for this building. It's public information now because it's on the web. The hard cost construction number that we opened for on Friday is 13.2. Now that doesn't mean that's all it's going to cost, because there are soft construction costs, there are contingencies, but the 13.2 is trending in what we expected it to trend for the last 3-4 years as we've been moving forward on the process. It's a process where I think we have a great architectural firm, project management, and now if we brought in a good construction company, that should be the third leg that we really want.
Gotcha. And how is it being paid for?
With meals tax money.
Yes, meals tax money.
See,
Yes,
that's it.
yes.
That's why Marion's here, in case we
Yes.
need it. Yeah, when we go out for capital projects, we pay for it with the meals tax. It cannot go for salaries. It can't go, some people, hire, bring social services in. That money can't go to that. There can be great causes that the town might want to fund, but CUP money, capital money can't go to that. Could we pave more roads if we didn't build a police station? Sure we could. And that's why I think it's a priority that if you ever saw the town council go through the capital improvement program, they have all the programs and they're plugging them in as we go. That's why, when I began this, I talked about this was back in 2005 this discussion started.
Right.
So from that time on, town council, is plugging it into the CUP, plug in the needs assessment, plug in the architecture money, plug in the project management, and then plug in the construction costs.
Yeah.
So it is a process.
Yeah. All right, last question here for you, and then we'll turn to our residents and see if we have questions from the audience. How will residents be able to follow along on this project and get updates from you periodically as the construction project goes along?
Well, multiple ways. One, if you go to our website, everything that we have done is on the police department website, up to and including the bid tabs from Friday. Those are on there. There is, that's been going on nonstop since we started. With the acquisition of the church, we actually want to have live progress because we want to put cameras on the church to watch the police station get built over the next 2 years. And then, like you had suggested, like they did with the community center, once we're up and moving, I can have monthly meetings, weekly meetings, how often we need to have meetings to discuss the process, to discuss moving forward. We've had public meetings on this project, but especially with the COVID pandemic, it's been difficult.
Right.
There were other plans for this. There were much more one-on-one information exchanges planned, but that became very difficult. And we have had some of that. I've met with neighbors. I've met, personally with some folks and talked about the project and answered questions.
Okay, well, good. Well, thanks a lot for answering all of these questions. You're in a hot seat tonight, so maybe you'll get some more difficult questions from the residents, maybe not. So this will be a good time. We have a good 30 minutes here for residents to ask questions of me or of the chief or any of the staff who's here. So are there any questions that anyone would like to ask?
Yeah, I have a question.
And if you could come to the mic there, that would be helpful, because I think we are recording.
Does the plan call for the demolition of the current headquarters building?
Yes, that'll be first step, is we will demo completely our current building and the Locust Street house. And it's already been through the process where it's been made one lot, and then they'll start from there. The church aspect of it, just not to expand a little bit, the purchase of the church came on so late. We hadn't really worked the church property in with the planning for the police station because the project was done by the time basically the church was bought. But it does give us a great opportunity to move over and to have a hands-on oversight of the project. Yes.
Hey, Mercury, thank you much. Jim Jackson. I live in 119 Cherry Circle, Southwest, directly behind the building. And you've probably seen my face. I know the chief has seen my face. I know the mayor has seen my face. Okay. Because I've got real concerns about the construction and the lot and the things that have gone on up until this point. As an example, the city council had to give themselves a variance to go ahead and build it as tall as it is. They had to give themselves a variance to go ahead and get as close to Locust Street as they are. They had to give themselves a variance, basically, for the lot coverage. None of that like you mentioned, and you mentioned, Chief, none of that has really been addressed adequately, in my opinion, as we went through the process. And because I've been living back behind where that big old wall is going to be for the last 10 years, I've gone to every single meeting I can go to and every single planning session I can go to. So I'm venting to you now. But one of the issues I have was the water flow off and erosion back behind it. Now, the chief met with me, and I tried to get some type of capacity to take care of that, and allegedly Dewberry is going to take care of that with a drainage system going underneath. We'll see how that all works. I'm very skeptical about that. The other part is, I asked to have blocking foliage put against this 10-foot wall. The second-story building there looks straight into my house. Straight into my house, less than 50 feet away, okay? And the whole wall is less than 3.5 feet from the property line. We could have taken 3 feet off that little plaza that the chief is so proud of and actually put some kind of blocking foliage behind that wall. Doesn't have to be a tree that's going to cause you a security issue, but the problem is that we could have done that and nobody listened. So I'm venting, but I do apologize. But my question to you, Chief, is you've mentioned a couple of times that we need more green. The city council has, yet we don't appear to be addressing that. Are we going to move forward to try and get more green space there? And then my other question, the second one for you, Chief, is you've mentioned a couple times that this police department is not accredited. What does that really mean to the towns of Vienna and the people that live here?
Sure. We'll start with the green topic. As we moved forward, we did try to get as green as we could out of it. And there was a question over whether this was going to be the most lot coverage of any building ever built in Vienna, and it's not. The fire department has a larger lot coverage.
Don't care about that part, though, Chief.
Oh, I know. I'm just saying.
All I care about is us adhering to our own requirements and our codes, and we didn't do it with this building.
Well,
We waived them all, put it that way.
Well, I think the issue becomes, given what we're trying to build and park and do, that's a lot coverage for a building this type is going to suffer. And I think if we were to combine lots, we actually could get away with that by combining it with the church property now.
Yeah, you're probably exactly right. So
also,
I'm going to keep a close eye on that lot, too. Thank you, appreciate it.
But also, your second question, accreditation, that's going to become more and more of a hot topic. It is national or state standards that a third-party group, it's usually run by Virginia Association of Chiefs of Police or a federal police chiefs group, they come in and look at your books have been processed also. Do you have proper general orders? Do you have proper evidence procedures? Is your evidence contained? And where that comes into play is if something ever does go wrong, or you ever do have a challenge for how you do evidence, or have a challenge on how you do something. That is where that comes in. That's a big, current climate. Current climate right now is there's a lot of thought ahead that Richmond might be pushing accreditation, forcing departments to come and get accredited. I mean, we have a great department. Accreditation, I have no concerns about accreditation other than having the ability to have the proper evidence processing area, have the proper evidence storage area, have those have somewhere to process a car. We don't have anywhere. If we have an issue with a car.
So I would assume you get all that from Fairfax, though. Am I incorrect in that? If you had to have a processing of cars or evidence issues or something, you'd go to because we are in Fairfax County, we do pay money to them to do stuff for us.
At that level, would they process a stolen car for us? Probably not. They're not going to go to that level.
Okay.
Evidence, no, they don't contain our evidence. We couldn't go to them and say, store our evidence.
So what type of services do we get from Fairfax County for the taxes we pay to them when it comes to law enforcement? Can I ask that question?
Sure. Every one of our officers go to the Fairfax County Police Academy. They're not charged for that. We do use any Fairfax County resource we don't have. We have access to a helicopter. We have access to K-9. We have access to a SWAT team. We have access to crisis negotiations.
Okay.
That's what we do get. What would we not get from Fairfax County? You wouldn't get 5 officers covering the town of Vienna. You wouldn't get a response time to a call of 2 minutes or less for priority 1 call. That's what we wouldn't get from Fairfax
And they don't
County.
Respond to us because we have our own police department.
We have our own. They could come in. If we need assistance, they will come.
Oh, okay.
So it's not a barrier type thing. They could come in. We can't go out into the county and enforce the law, but they can't come in here. We've brought them in here. The Halloween parade every year, if you notice that, we have Fairfax County deputies. Their motor squad is part of the Halloween parade, or their bike team, I think it is part of the Halloween parade.
So what I think I just heard you say is you can stand up a police department with no accreditation required, but there hasn't been one in the past, but there may be one in the future.
Well, the department was accredited many years ago, but as it slowly outgrew the building, it also outgrew accreditation.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for your time. I appreciate it,
Sure,
gentlemen.
absolutely. And I'll follow up on a little bit of that. There are a number of police stations across the state and the country that aren't accredited.
Oh, the majority are.
Right, and so, we want to be one of the ones that are, and we want to have a facility that would enable us to have a capability of being able to be accredited with ease. I think also you mentioned something about waiving this or that with the police station project on the site. The one thing that we have to consider is that the police station construction project, as it is, like the community center, like this town hall building, the lot coverage and those types of things where we compare with other zones in the town, is just going to be bigger than what you see in different zones. So we're kind of in line with, like I think the chief mentioned, we're in line with the police station. I mean the fire station, in line with
Town hall.
town hall, in line with the community center, other bigger facilities. We're pretty much, I think, in line with those. So, but thanks for bringing those questions up. Next question.
Yes, thank you. Pat Terrell, 205 Tallahassee. I don't understand why it's a problem to run the bike rodeo out of the fire department, or why we're renting space for RAD when we have a newly renovated community center. It seems like there's maybe a little bit of overkill going on here. Thank you.
Sure. Well, I mean, could we run it out of the fire department? We could, but is the police department interacting with the community by going to the fire department and just putting on the bike rodeo? I'd rather that be a police event. RAD, no, that cannot go to the community center. I don't think the community center has storage capacity for the RAD equipment that we require. Plus, the programming of that space, I think we'd have to get in the general mix of the community center programming. I think it'd be a bigger challenge than it would look on its surface. That's how it ended up at Navy Fed originally.
Thank you.
Right, and to follow up with that, the community center, the programming that they have there is at max capacity. So the RAD program is something that is a police department program, and so it has been for years something that the police department has tried to work out of the police department facility if they could, or finding Navy Federal Credit Union or some other location. But the community center already is at capacity with programming and need for programming there. So there's a little bit of a challenge with that.
Right. And I think if we did push our way into the community center, we would most likely be displacing a revenue generating program. And RAD, while there is a cost to it, it's really not revenue generating. The cost is associated more with getting your certification and the workbook and work material you get.
Perhaps I don't know what RAD is. I know the police department runs a women's
That's what it
self-defense
is,
course
yes.
at it used to be at the community center. Am I right or wrong? It used to be at the community.
Was it? It was there one time? Okay.
Yeah.
It used to be right around the time prior to the renovation at the community center. Is about the time when they ran out of storage. They needed the storage that we had. The gear for RAD, it's literally a bag that's about 5 foot long and about 3 foot wide, and there's about 10 of them, and then there's 2 or 3 other bags. So it takes up a lot of space. Community center needed that space back prior to the renovation over there, and then so we kind of lost our storage, so we moved it into the other storage on Mill Street, and then it got moved over to Navy Fed, and we were able to utilize their space and their storage.
Okay, so it's all on one
our
side.
gear is stored there as well.
Any other questions? Okay. Well,
All right.
Jim, thank you for spending time with us this evening.
Thank you.
I know this won't be the only opportunity to have conversations with Jim. I'll probably do another on deck, another 6-9 months or something when we get a little further along in the project, and bring Jim back. Such a willing guest.
Yeah, as long as it's that far out, we're okay.
So we're going to take a little bit of a break here, maybe a 5-minute break, and then we're going to have the Director of Fairfax County Elections, Gary Scott, join us for a short conversation. So thanks, everyone, and we'll see you in about 5 minutes. That's good. Well, welcome back to On Deck with Mercury, and I have with me now Gary Scott, who also is a frequent guest. He was with us earlier this spring with the elections here with Town Council. And now he's here with us with the election coming up on November 3rd. November 3rd? November 4th?
November 3rd.
November 3rd. So Gary Scott's the director of the Fairfax County Office of Elections. And we're going to have a nice little dialogue here about just the event itself and what residents should expect. How are you doing this evening?
I'm getting by.
Good, good, good. I know that this is an incredibly busy time for you, obviously, and I'm glad you could take time out of your busy schedule to join us tonight. What so far has been the most difficult part about managing this election?
Probably staffing. We've had to bring on an additional 300 part-time staffers. As soon as we recruited them, we began losing them. We've had issues. People have expressed mostly concerns due to COVID. Many of the staffers that we're using are internal to the office and don't interact with the public, but a significant number of them, like for our satellite locations, do interact with the public, and we've been having problems keeping those numbers up.
Yeah. How's this been different from previous presidential elections?
Well, the rules have changed to a great deal. This is the first year that Virginia has not required an excuse to vote absentee. And we anticipated a great deal of turnout due to that, but then on top of that, the COVID crisis has increased the anxiety for people to go to their polling places on Election Day, and then it's a very unsettled political environment, which has further increased everyone's anxiety. So we're seeing a much heavier turnout than we would have predicted even as late as July.
Sure, sure. Maybe you can outline for everyone the different ways people can vote on November 3rd. I know my mother votes in Prince William County. I took her to vote early. That was a seamless process for her. I voted early myself. Maybe you could talk about the various ways people can vote.
There are basically three ways to vote. There is early voting, what we used to call in-person absentee voting, which is currently available only at the, through today, only available in the Government Center. Tomorrow we're opening 13 additional locations around the county. The closest one to Vienna is Tyson's Pinnock Library, which is a new location this year. And then on Saturdays, we will have a 14th additional location, which we were not able to book for the week, but we were able to get them to allow us to use it on Saturdays. Then there's voting by mail. You have to submit an application to get the ballot by mail. The difference this year is you do not have to return it by mail. We currently have drop boxes at the Government Center, one inside, one outside. Every satellite location will also have a drop box available when they're open. And then every polling place will have a drop box. So you don't have to, if you have concerns about getting your ballot back through the mail, you have this option of dropping it off in the drop boxes. And then there's always, you can put it in the mail. And we're getting 5,000 applications every 2 days back by mail.
Sure.
And then there's just going to the polling place on Election Day.
Sure.
I consider it ironic that we're seeing lines at the Government Center. People are standing in line for up to 2 hours to avoid standing in line at the polling place. And I expect this will be a repeat of 2008, where there were no lines at the polling places at all. So many people had voted absentee that the lines were almost non-existent on Election Day.
You mentioned standing in line for 2-3 hours. I know when my mother voted in Prince William County, and she can't stand for very long, and so she was able to just go right up and vote, bypass the line. Do we have something similar here in Fairfax County?
We have curbside voting.
That's what she did.
And so you can request, a lot of people don't understand it. It's available to anyone 65 or older or who has a disability. We currently have we didn't have it today because of the rain, but we currently we have a station outside of the Government Center where people can check in, and then the ballot will be brought out to them. They can vote it, and then they're done. Curbside voting is actually a rather lengthy process. It will generally take 20 minutes to half an hour to go through the process once you check in, because you have to be checked into the system. We have to issue you a ballot. We've got to bring it out. We've got to verify it. We've got to take it back and cast it. So, and it's not, a lot of people mistake it for head of the line, and it's not. It's you vote in turn, just like everyone else does. But we do run it as a separate operation. Curbside will also be available at all the satellites, but because they're much smaller operations, we're actually recommending that if you want to vote curbside, come to the government center.
Right.
You can do it at the satellites, but some of them parking is problematic. McLean Governmental Center, I think their parking lot's about the size of this room. And some of the others, it can be a little more difficult, and it will be much easier and faster because we have people dedicated to curbside voting at the government center that we wouldn't at the satellites.
Sure, sure. And so just to recap here, you said that Tyson's Pemmant Library is where people in Vienna, it's a close location.
That's I think the closest location other than the government center, but you can go to any of the satellites.
Okay.
All of the different ballot styles are available at any satellite. So if you happen to be in the vicinity down in Lorton and decide you want to vote, you can go to the Laurel Hill Golf Club, which is where we have the satellite this year. Normally it's at the library, but the library is closed for renovations, so we had to find an alternative location or we wouldn't have anything in South County at all.
Sure, sure. And this is October 13th. How long will it be available to vote at the satellite locations up until the election, or
Our satellite voting ends at 5 p.m. on October 31st.
October 31st, Saturday, October 31st?
So that's set in law.
Okay.
Satellites are open 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. Daily, weekdays are open from 1 to 7. Saturdays are open from 9 to 5.
Got it. And you mentioned by mail, so is there a particular date that anyone who lives in Vienna, they want to vote by mail? What dates should they be looking out for? What's the cutoff?
The October 23rd at 5 p.m. is the deadline to request an absentee ballot by mail. And postmarks don't count. The application must be received in our office by 5 p.m. for us to process it. By that time, considering, I will say mail service has been, I wouldn't call it erratic, but it's not particularly consistent. In some parts of the county, people are getting their ballots in 2 days. In some parts of the county, they're getting them in 9 days. So if you're waiting as late as the 23rd, you might want to actually consider the option of voting in person.
Got it.
Because the ballot has to be counted, has to be postmarked by Election Day and received in our office by noon on the Friday after Election Day.
So you mentioned a number of key dates here. Maybe we kind of go through them real quickly again. So satellite voting, October 31st, 5 p.m.
Correct.
Voting by mail, you're saying October 23rd is the cutoff there.
October, where the application must be received by 5 p.m. on October 23rd. That's correct.
Any other key dates that residents of Vienna should?
Well, the other key date is today. Today is the deadline to register for the election. Okay. In-person registration ended at 5 p.m. today. But you can still submit an application online through the state portal until 11:59. And if you can get it to a post office, as long as it's postmarked by today, it'll still be processed.
All right. Will ballots cast in-person voting, early voting, be counted electronically and be part of the election night tally?
Well, the in-person voting is scanned as you vote, so it's like going to a polling place. You're feeding your ballot into the same sort of machine you would at the polling place. They're not tabulated. We can't tabulate them until Election Day, but then they will be reported on Election night. Now, one of the issues that we will be having is because the state has changed the law to allow return of ballots after Election Day. Because prior to this year, the ballots had to be returned by 7 p.m. on election night. we will not be providing complete results on election night. The absentee result will be incomplete until probably the following weekend, maybe as late as Monday.
Okay. There's questions down here a little ways, but I'm curious now, so I'll ask it early. So on election night, do you think that we would know Fairfax County's results from the election? And do you think that that would be available, or do you think that we won't know on election night?
We will know the results from all of the precincts on election night, the 243 precincts. We will not know the final result from CAP because we will still be counting ballots through Friday. And then there are still what we call provisional ballots that will have to be counted as well. So we're not going to have the final results until the beginning of the following week.
So now I'm just asking just your just general thoughts about this just nationally. Do you think that we'll know who's been elected president the night of the election, or do you think that because of all the things we're mentioning that we may not know the night of?
I wouldn't hold out a whole lot of hope that every state's going to be able to report all of the results. Even here, we're anticipating we're going to have between what we collect at the polling places on election day and then ballots returned by mail after election day, we're going to have 40,000 ballots to count.
Wow.
And to put this in a little context, Fairfax County is the largest locality in the state.
Right.
If we divided our vote, our turnout on election day between in-person election day and absentee voting, our absentee ballot turnout will be the largest locality in the state. We anticipate around between 300 and 350,000 ballots to be counted prior to election day. And that's going to be about 5% of the total for Virginia.
That's pretty big amount.
There is not another locality in Virginia that has as many registered voters in it that we will have voting absentee.
That's amazing. Going back to the mail-in ballots question, how and when will the mail-in ballots be counted, and how long do you anticipate that would take?
Well, we're counting the mail-in ballots now. Virginia law allows us to scan the ballots and run them through the tabulators. We cannot run their final results until election night. So, but no, we're counting, we've counted about 90,000 ballots so far.
Wow. What advice would you offer to absentee by-mail voters, those voting in early in person, those going to the election polls on the day of the election? And what advice would you give them as far as what to expect when in those experiences?
Absentee, one of the big issues that we have with people requesting ballots by mail, most people do it electronically. They go to the state site and then submit the application that way. And then when they haven't received a ballot electronically, 5 minutes later, they go and do it again and again and again. We had one woman submit 50 applications in an hour and 20 minutes. But it still the application has to be processed and the ballot has to be sent by mail. So, you know, when you request a ballot by mail, don't expect immediate results. It's going to be several days.
Right.
If you're voting early in person, expect to wait in line some. We're looking at, we do 1,300 to 1,400 people a day at the government center. We anticipate the satellites are going to average 500 to 600 a day. And that's average. Some of them are going to do much more, some of them are going to do much less. But there are going to be lines, and anticipate those. If you're going to vote on election day, pick your time. Traditionally, most of our turnout would be between 6 a.m. and 7:30, and then it would drop off from there, and then we would see a slight pickup. With more people working from home or for one reason or another not going into work, We've been seeing voting, we saw in June for the primary, voting moving later during the day. So don't show up first thing in the morning and don't wait until the end of the day to do it. But be judicious and try to plan it around, and you should have a very quick and pleasant voting experience.
Sure. Only have one question left, and then we'll turn to our residents and see if they have some more. What strategies is your office looking at using to address COVID-19 related concerns and voter fraud concerns?
Well, for COVID-19, we are enforcing social distancing, both for the early voting and for election day, which actually slows the processing because we can have fewer people in the room at any given time. That's the big limitation for the early voting, where normally we could have 8 voters in the room at a given time. Now we can have 4. So that's going to be some slow. We're putting up acrylic shields to separate the election officers from the voters. We're using, we've issued all of our election officers. We'll have face masks and enough face masks. We have enough face masks so they can change during the day. So CDC guidelines are to swap out after about every 3 to 4 hours.
Right.
So we'll have enough to do that. We have face shields for every election officer. We've issued them gloves, although we found that gloves are not a particularly popular item, but we have hand sanitizer for their use. We're also sanitizing the marking stations after each use, using single-use privacy sleeves and single-use pins for the voters, and asking people to just use a little common sense.
Sure.
As far as voter fraud, voter fraud is one of these things that grows in the telling rather than the action. For early voting, we are going directly into the state's registration database, so we can see if someone is immediately see if someone is trying to vote twice, or they've cast a ballot and it's been returned and they're trying to vote again. And we have procedures to stop that. We do recognize that sometimes people make errors, so that it could be somebody else could have accidentally been accredited with their ballot, so we have provisions for covering that as well. Voter fraud at the polling place level isn't something that happens very often. It's just too difficult to do.
To do it, yeah.
To get any sort of large scale, enough of a scale to influence the result.
Sure. I guess maybe a follow-up to that before we get to residents' questions. Are there any changes to rules regarding identifications that are acceptable to you at the polling location?
The General Assembly repealed the requirement for a photo ID this year. So people do not have to have a photo ID, and they have reinstated the old affirmation form, where if you do not have an ID, you can, instead of voting a provisional ballot, you can fill out this oath where you attest that you are who you claim to be. They've expanded the number of things that can be used, a utility bill, since it's no longer a photo ID. As a matter of fact, most people use their driver's licenses. It's convenient. Almost everybody has something issued by the Department of Motor Vehicle. And our voting equipment on election day, when you're using that, we can scan the barcode and it brings your record up immediately. So using the driver's license certainly makes voting process faster.
Sure. Any final tips for our residents who want to vote? Any final words of advice?
Well, one of the things we would encourage, we have gotten a large number, several thousand people who had requested absentee ballots by mail and then showed up to vote in person. And we would encourage people who have requested a ballot to return that ballot by mail or putting it in one of the drop-off boxes. When they attempt to vote in person, it really slows the process. We have to, if they have the ballot with them, we have to spoil it. We have to back them out of the system, re-enter them into the system, and it can take 3 or 4 times as long to vote as it would be if you were just going up to vote. So we encourage people to return their ballots.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks a lot for answering all those questions. I know it's a lot to express here in the setting, but I think it's important for residents to know this information. Are there any questions from our residents here on the election coming up? Okay. I have a question from my staff.
I've been getting a lot of calls from residents, and one last week, a gentleman wanted to know about returning an absentee ballot in the drop box. And apparently there's something on the ballot that says you may only return your ballot. He wanted to drop off his wife's, and she is handicapped. Is he allowed to do that?
Due to a change in under the code, no. The code says the ballot must be returned by the voter, but the State Department of Elections has instituted a regulatory change which allows people to return multiple ballots.
Okay.
Hi, Howard Springsteen, Town Council. Appreciate your presentation tonight. I just came from New Jersey, and my mother asked me to go to a local police station in Hillsdale, New Jersey, make sure there was a drop box. Virtually all of New Jersey is voting by drop boxes, unless there's a special reason. I thought that very interesting. I think you guys are running a great operation in the government center, but I was just pretty impressed that Jersey is virtually, no one's going to the polls in New Jersey. Everyone's voting by absentee or putting them in drop boxes.
Mm-hmm. We're expecting 2/3 of our voters to vote before Election Day.
No, you guys do a great job there. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, if there are no more questions, thank you all for coming here to On Deck with Mercury, and thank you, Gary, for joining us again. Maybe we'll have you back again here soon, maybe.
It'll have to be soon.
It'll have to be soon. I know. You have a retirement coming up.
I have a retirement coming up.
So just wanted to let everyone know who's watching and who's here that our next topic in November will be the Maud Robertson Sidewalk Project. We will talk about that in November, and then in December we will have the Director of Fairfax County Health Department with us in December to talk about the COVID-19 pandemic, get an update on that. So with that, I just want to tell everyone thank you for joining in for this discussion. Remember, stay home if you're sick, wash your hands, remember social distance and wear your face covering, and have a wonderful evening and the rest of your week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.